This video outlines the steps and procedures necessary to remove and replace the tail rotor shaft from all BK117 variants up to and including the C2. Of course, you should always comply with all current maintenance instructions outlined in the Aircraft Maintenance Manual. Should a discrepancy exist between this video and the AMM, the written instructions shall apply. Failure to remove and install the tail rotor shaft properly may cause damage to the splined end of the shaft. A few special tools will be required to perform this task. Additionally, we will need a method to cool the tail rotor shaft to approximately -50 degrees C and heat the hollow shaft to a maximum of 80 degrees C. For this demonstration, we will use a cooler with dry ice and a heat gun. We will begin by marking the respective sides of the tail rotor fork, the tail rotor head, the PC links, and finally the blade grips. This will allow us to later reassemble all the components in their original position. Once labeled, we can remove both PC links and the close tolerance through bolt. The rotor head and blade assembly is heavy and may be cumbersome. Be careful to support the entire assembly when pulling the close tolerance bolt and removing the rotor head. Now, we will drain the oil from the tail rotor transmission and remove the bell crank. On the other side of the transmission, remove the 6 studs which hold the cover. Once all the studs are removed, pull the cover and carefully remove the shim. Now we will use the puller tool to remove the locking plate. Thread the body of the tool onto the plate and turn the spindle to free it. Next, use the smaller box spanner to remove the silver left-hand threaded bolt. We recommend using a 2x4 in the tail rotor fork to keep the shaft from rotating as you remove the bolt. Apply inward force to keep the tool in position as you initially break the bolt loose. Once broken loose, it should thread out easily. Now, use the larger box spanner to remove the shaft nut. This nut has traditional right-hand threads. Once again, hold the shaft with the 2x4 and press inward on the tool to maintain its position on the nut. Like the bolt, the nut should thread off easily once broken loose. We are now ready to push the tail rotor shaft out of the transmission using the pushing out tool. Before mounting the tool on the transmission, ensure that the spindle is threaded back from the interior flange. Install the tool by turning the bell-shaped body until the holes in the tool align with the holes in the transmission. There will likely be a bit of space between the tool flange and the transmission. This is okay for now. We are threading the tool onto the same hollow shaft from which you removed the shaft nut in the previous step. Next, install 3 studs through the tool flange into the transmission, approximately 3 threads deep. Slowly turn the tail rotor shaft clockwise, as viewed from the fork end, until the bell-shaped body fully seats against the tail rotor transmission housing. Now we can tighten the 3 studs. This will keep the tool in position as we push the tail rotor shaft from the hollow shaft. Remove the bellows from the transmission before turning the spindle to push the tail rotor shaft out. Once the shaft is out, remove the studs and unscrew the tool from the transmission. With the shaft removed, you may now complete whatever maintenance action required its removal. Afterward, we can begin the reinstallation process. First, Install the spindle of the mounting device tool into the threaded hole on the splined end of the rotor shaft. Next, install the setting sleeve over the splined portion of the tool and shaft. Now tighten the jam nut to hold the tool in position. The splines are now in alignment. Remove the setting sleeve and insert the end of the shaft into the cooler containing dry ice. It will take between 60 and 90 minutes for the shaft to cool to approximately -50 degrees C. Before removing the rotor shaft from the cooler, we must heat the hollow shaft in the transmission itself, not to exceed 80 degrees C. Once both shafts are at their proper temperatures, remove the rotor shaft from the cooler and check that the splines on the tool remain tight and in perfect alignment with those on the rotor shaft itself. Occasionally, you may find that the nut becomes loose during the cooling process and allows the splined portion of the tool to rotate and become misaligned. If this occurs, simply reinstall the setting sleeve to realign the splines, retighten the nut, and reinsert the shaft into the dry ice until it returns to approximately -50 C. In the meantime, continue to monitor the temperature of the hollow shaft. After removing the rotor shaft from the cooler, quickly insert it into the heated hollow shaft. While you may need to rotate the rotor shaft slightly during installation, it's imperative that the splines of the tool and drive shaft remain aligned with those inside the hollow shaft. Once you've pushed the rotor shaft in as far as possible, thread the body of the mounting device tool onto the spindle until it contacts the hollow shaft. Once fully seated, leave the hollow and rotor shafts to equalize in temperature, thus forming an interference fit. Now we can remove the tools and continue reassembly. Be sure to follow the procedures and replace the O-rings as required. If you have any questions, please contact Airbus technical support before proceeding.